one of the big unlocks that we've had is understanding that a customer journey is not linear. Like you don't see something external, you don't click through and buy. Sometimes it takes our consumers up to 3 or 4 visits before they actually ultimately transact.
Hey folks, super excited for the podcast that you're about to listen to with Jennifer. We touched on a whole bunch of topics, including what it means to have an outlet brand. Does that dilute your primary brand? Do you have 2 different online experiences? Do customers think of it as one? In addition to that, you can get some really good insights from an industry vet who spent more than 10 years in ecom and is still very much on the cutting edge of technology. So super excited for that. Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce toolbox experts perspective. Joining us today, we have Jennifer. Jennifer is the Senior Director of Global Marketing Digital Experience at Coach. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm really excited for this podcast. We're going to get into a whole bunch of things. Obviously, you've been with Coach for a little bit. You've managed some of the outlets. We're going to get into some of kind of the topics of commodity e-com versus experiential e-com today. So maybe for those that didn't do the research ahead of time like me, you've been with Coach for about a decade. You started in operations. Now you're a senior digital leader. Maybe talk us through your career journey and where you started and kind of the parts of the business you look at today.
Yeah, of course. So I started my career over a decade ago, as you just mentioned, and I actually started in e-commerce merchandising. So doing things like site uploads, photography, curating our shops, etc. From there, I moved into site operations, site content, eventually working my way up to oversee the entire business. Those early roles are really what set the foundation for how the business really works. So I understood kind of the inner workings in and out, and allowed me to deepen my knowledge of e-commerce, and the importance of just building a website. And oftentimes people say they go to a website and they think it's like it just happens. Like I've had these conversations with my friends, and there's so much work that actually goes behind the scenes for it. So for me, it was really lovely to have a career that allowed me to really deepen that understanding and just know kind of the essentials of what running this business really is. So now in my new role, I've taken a new seat. I've managed the 2 businesses, and now I'm doing global marketing, really focusing on a slightly different, nuanced approach. Whereas before I was overseeing more of the day-to-day business operations, now I'm overseeing making sure that we're scaling kind of to global markets and ensuring that we have that emotional tie back to the consumer.
Very cool. Talk to us a bit about, and you don't have to make this only about Coach, but for businesses that have kind of the outlet model versus the core business, talk to us a bit about building those digital experiences. And I'm assuming they're different.
Yes. Well, actually, sometimes they don't have to be different, right? So one thing that we actually, as I took on the outlet seat specifically, we had done a lot of research, and what we found was that customers actually think of Coach the brand, not necessarily retail versus outlet. So as I took on that seat, actually, I found that you really don't have to make the experiences that different, because depending on how the customer is navigating to your brand and your brand, whether that be in stores or on a retail website or an outlet website, at the end of the day, it's just the consumer interpreting it as your brand. So what we've done is actually over the course of the years since I had taken outlet the business is try to remove and reduce the noise that often outlet channels have. So we used to talk about things like 70 plus 10, 70 plus 20, and trying to lead a lot with promotions. And we've actually now completely changed that model to be really focused on ensuring that you have a cohesive brand experience, regardless of where the customer is entering. So that includes things like maybe not leading with promotion and leading with the same brand message and the same brand value that you would find on something like a retail store.
In your research, what are some of the kind of different mindsets that dictates if a customer wants to be going to the outlet versus I don't know, I guess the core business, for lack of better words, if it's not price?
Yeah, honestly, some of it is proximity when we talk about stores. So sometimes the closest exposure someone has ever had to the brand is your closest outlet mall. And that actually is reality. We have a lot of people in North America that actually the closest thing they have is a Coach outlet store. And so that's the first impression they have. And therefore, they are naturally more in tune to interpret Coach the brand as a Coach outlet through the Coach outlet lens. So I think sometimes it's proximity of where you are. The other thing is how and what products appeal to you. So our products are very similar in terms of like they're made to have very equal quality. They are made to last forever. And that does not change depending on whether you go to the retail or the outlet channel. So I think the differentiator really is your budget that you have, but sometimes also things like proximity and the ability for what you have seen in your ecosystem to impact then what you want to buy in the future.
If you're listening to the e-commerce toolbox, you're entitled to a podcast exclusive website audit. Go to noibu.com/podcast-audit for a free scan that uncovers the hidden friction blocking your conversions and shows you where you're leaking revenue.
That's an interesting take. I never really thought of it like that, but that kind of makes sense actually, as I kind of apply it to my own lens. We talked a bit about so far about going from like a transitional storefront to an immersive brand experience, whether it's on the outlet business or just on the core business. What are kind of some of the biggest things that need to happen, in your opinion, for the customer to, or for the business to go from transactional kind of mindset to immersive brand, while most people at the end of the day get judged on a conversion rate and revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love talking about this because it is something that I think a lot of us think are always at odds with each other, like that notion of e-commerce or transactional with brand storytelling, when really they need to be intersected, and at some point really focusing on both and ensuring that both have a place and a moment in the consumer journey. I think one of the big unlocks that we've had is understanding that a customer journey is not linear. Like you don't see something external, you don't click through and buy, right? Like sometimes it takes our consumers up to 3 or 4 visits before they actually ultimately transact. And so that idea of a journey being really what we focus on and how that impacts how we maybe place importance on certain things has been really a big unlock for us, because you might imagine a consumer now for the first time visit, we're placing much more emphasis on that emotional tie back to the brand and making sure that the place that they're landing on is doing a better effort than maybe when they're coming back from paid social and are being retargeted to come back to buy a product. I think those two things, again, are sometimes put in companies. It's to your point, like we're measured against conversion and driving demand, but one cannot be successful without the other. And sometimes it's very important to define kind of the key elements of success that would make one work for the other. So for example, we have talked about internally these things called micro conversions, right? Like you come to a website and you might sign up for SMS, you might wish list things, you might click around in the navigation, you might spend a really long time on a page. And so those would be things that we classify as a micro conversion that then indicates to us that you have interacted with the brand in one way and are ultimately someone that we care about and want to make sure that we focus on you for your next visit.
Very interesting. Have you ever ran any experiments that added some, call it micro conversions? Maybe it elongated the sales cycle, but it's going to drive to more absolute revenue. And then like, how do you not get tempted to switch it back on the back of this actually drove down conversion when we looked at the first set of segment data?
Yeah. We have, I mean, we're constantly testing so many theories on our side. But yes, we ran one example specifically as it related to media, a media tactic that we had live and the landing experience that we had for the consumer. So oftentimes you all might know that like you have something on, I don't know, a Facebook carousel and your option is only to link to PDP. So we linked actually to a curated PLP that actually led with a lot of content and we romanced a lot of things. It wasn't a success from the bats, but I would say we've had really interesting learnings in the reduction of bounce rate, which I think is always a measure of success for something like media to site KPIs. And then we also ran it through user research. So trying to understand also customer sentiment, like what was it about the page that was resonating versus not resonating. And then we did that same experiment 3 times over until we felt like, okay, what we're getting is actually not only reduced bounce rate and higher time spent on page, but also um, not immediate conversion, but second visit conversion. So I think it's so important again to have those key KPIs that you're tracking towards in order for you to then measure success and ensure that you're optimizing for those, even though it might not be as simple as conversion for your visit.
Makes sense. And I think we talk a lot about this in our business as well around leading indicators. Like, what are the leading indicators? And not necessarily that you want to just optimize for them, but they do matter.
Yeah.
I mean, Coach has gone through a bit of a resurgence, especially with some of the younger kind of demographic. We know that obviously through social, discovery, storytelling, like influence has become really, really critical.
Mhm.
Yeah, like talk to us a bit about how you're looking at that. There's been a lot of kind of suspicion or hype that um that LLMs are gonna kind of start to do some sort of discoverability, although candidly, we're not seeing it on the traffic side with our customer base. Curious if you see that any differently. But yeah, I'm curious like how you guys are thinking about, I guess, first part of the question, storytelling, driving kind of organic social virality to bring your products and educate to a new demographic. And then on the back of that, like, do you see LLMs playing a place at all in discoverability? Kind of like social, or is that just kind of all hype, no action so far?
Yeah. I actually think the answer to both of these are like actually very connected. We have started our very deep discovery of LLMs. And I do think when you think about how customers are discovering brands, now we have things like, TikTok now feels like ages ago, but people were discovering brands through TikTok. They'd never heard of a certain brand or they'd never had it in their consideration to purchase. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's all over TikTok. And it actually has amazing organic reviews about how well the product is being utilized. And all of a sudden you could see virality to your point. And I think for us, it's really leaning into our community to make sure that everything that we are putting out there is authentic. So ensuring that every touch point, again, from a consumer experience is as positive as we can. Because if you have a really good experience, whether that be in store or on our site, people are way more likely to talk about it. So we lean into that, and that in itself then creates more organic buzz for our brand. I think on the LLM side, there is obviously now this new discoverability with LLM. So people are using ChatGPT way more. And there's all these stats about how a user who uses ChatGPT for discovery is actually way more likely to convert. And I think the numbers to your point are super small, but there's definitely a need for us to just start some of that and ensuring that like if someone's typing something like read what should I wear for Valentine's Day for a date night with my boyfriend, that we have very specific crawlable websites that have content that relates to that question. So I don't think it's not where it's not probably the usage rate right now is super small and it's not where it's going to be, but I definitely think similar to TikTok, it's going to be something that'll blow up, and tomorrow we'll be having the same conversation. It'll feel like, oh my God, it's already changed so much, and the way that people are discovering brands is now completely different.
Yeah, it's a very interesting take. I also wonder, like, as these things get more information and kind of build a bit more context of the user, like, does that then, like, are you ever going to be on a website and sign in through your ChatGPT SSO, and then on the back of that, like, your experience looks different? Like, those are kind of some of the things that we're thinking about. Like, is the LLM data going to be brought to the front end experience through the owned website, or is it going to be the opposite? And everyone's kind of saying that it's going to be the opposite, right? You're
Right.
going to do discoverability in there, but I don't know. That's something that we think about a lot, and I don't know what the
Yeah.
right answer is.
I don't either. I feel like a lot of it right now is guesswork, right? And I think if you're not trying something, I feel like you're already kind of behind. So it's a theory, literally go out and try to test it out, because I think all brands are not experts in it right now. And the one thing you can be doing is at least trialing your theories and just testing things until you kind of discover more of what will be the trend in the future.
Very cool. Um, as more teams are starting to work together, you have the creative team, you have the digital team, you're going to have the IT team. They're going to work really closely with like the merchandising team. Are you seeing any kind of trends internally on how data systems are architected or brought together, and people actually start to collaborate on the creative side and the data side? Like how are you thinking about that as you've kind of climbed through the ranks and you're gaining more and more responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have a very unified shared vision, and I think it's taken a really long time to get here. But if you read anything from anything we published, we're a publicly traded company, so we have a lot of resources. We do an investor day where we bring our investors as well and talk to them about our strategies. But you can look up a lot of the articles that we've published and shared information. We have a very clear goal of making sure that we are acquiring right now the Gen Z female consumer. And so when you have that clear of a goal, it then becomes super easy for all teams to be aligned on that shared vision, right? Like the how we get there and the part we play, depending on whether you're IT or whether you're ecom or marketing, will be slightly different, but like the goal is still the same. So I think I'm very lucky to work for a company that has that shared goal and that has cascaded from the top down across all levels. And we're a very data centric company, which I think is the other piece that makes life easier in general. Is just if people have, you can't really argue with data. So if you have the right KPIs and you're measuring success in a way that feels unified and you've aligned on those KPIs, and it becomes much simpler for things to move forward and for teams to be marching to the same drum.
I mean, it makes sense. Like architecturally, how did you guys nail that? Right? Like some businesses just struggle getting the data. Like one thing that I'm involved in is you have different teams that are looking at the same data, but they're saying different things. Do you know what I mean? Like they're looking
Mm-hmm.
at them in different systems and they're contradicting each other.
Yeah.
Right? Is that something that you've kind of witnessed before in your career, and how have you been able to kind of come around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is also, like having the open dialogue and communication. So I see it actually more now in my new role. It's like marketing and global marketing, I should say, in some ways sometimes is not as connected as like the last click KPI that you would see in e-commerce, but it's about knowledge sharing, I think, and sharing kind of the KPIs you're seeing on each side to make sure that you're interpreting things in the same way. It definitely helps if you have an organization that enables data scientists to also cascade information or to create um, dashboards that everyone can access and therefore see the data in the same way that you can. But it's definitely, I would say, important to continue to have the conversations and like explore the why together, because it's harder for teams that might be not as in tune with the business to then understand the impacts of the work that they have on the greater business.
Very cool. And as we look to wrap up today, Jennifer, maybe talk to us a bit about what is the biggest learning that you've had, either from your old role, your current role, and how would that kind of, if you had to remake one of those critical decisions today, how would you look at it before and after?
Yeah, I think, I mean, early on in my career, I would say I was probably less risk averse. And I think it takes, because ecom is a place where you can A/B test, you can put things in front of consumers and get almost immediate feedback on whether or not it's working. I wish I had taken more risks to learn more quickly, because I think especially when you're doing something like merchandising, you might have a very early idea or early concept, and why not try it? Like, try it, see if it works. Like, same thing as I was saying for the LLMs. Like, if you have a theory, we always are testing theories on our side, and I actually think that's what makes our e-commerce business so successful, is that we're constantly reimagining what best in class means and constantly redefining what a good experience is. So I think constantly testing, not being afraid to try things, easier said than done. But I think when you have the backing of A/B testing, it's much easier to actually do it. And I wish I had done more of that early in my career. I think more recently, something that I think strategically might have maybe changed the direction that I would have discovered things a little bit more differently would be, oftentimes you can get stuck on looking at a page specifically. So how's my homepage performing? How's my shop performing? How's my PDP performing? But like, again, customers' journeys are not linear. So it's so important to understand the full customer journey and to really immerse yourself in understanding what's the value that each of those pages really has when you're thinking about a customer navigating a website in a matter of a minute. And at what point is it important to have certain information? We've done an oversimplification of redesign of our PDP, and now we're constantly reinventing what that best in class means, because it's so important to understand where that friction point is and how to eliminate those friction points.
Very cool. Well, Jennifer, appreciate the time. This was a great episode. Really, really good. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
The e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.